All right, let's jump right into this. Today's explainer takes us back 130 years to a scandal so massive it literally shook the foundations of Europe. We're talking about the Dreyfus Affair. Back in 1894, a French captain named Alfred Dreyfus, an Alsatian Jew, was falsely accused of espionage. But, this isn't just some historical true crime story about a forged letter. It's really a masterclass in how political paranoia, systemic prejudice, and an absolutely massive military cover-up ended up reshaping global history. To really grasp the gravity of this, you have to picture the scene. It's January 1895, the freezing courtyard of the Paris Military School. Captain Dreyfus is standing there, completely surrounded by his peers. He's being publicly humiliated. They literally strip the military insignia right off his uniform and break his sword in half. And amidst this total public disgrace, he just shouts, "I am innocent! Vive la France!" After that, he's shipped off to a life sentence on Devil's Island in French Guiana. So, how on earth did a loyal officer end up there?
Well, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to trace this incredible story through 6 key acts. First, the accusation and the fall. Then we'll look at the crisis within the French Republic, expose the farce and the cover-up, examine the massive cultural war between Dreyfusards and anti-Dreyfusards, explore the global historical impact, and finally, look at Dreyfus's eventual rehabilitation.
Okay, let's get right into part 1, the accusation and the fall. The whole nightmare started with, and you really can't make this up, literal trash. Specifically, a torn, handwritten letter known as the bordereau. A French intelligence agent who was disguised as a cleaning lady actually fished this out of a wastebasket at the German embassy in Paris. It promised the delivery of French military secrets, so naturally the military scrambled to find a culprit. And why did they land on Dreyfus? Well, his handwriting was sort of vaguely similar, but honestly, it was mostly because he was wealthy, kind of reserved, and from Alsace. He fit a very specific cultural profile. So they pinned the treason on him and held a secret trial in December 1894, where the evidence was completely hidden, even from his own defense team. But why was his specific profile targeted in the first place? That takes us to part 2, a republic in crisis, a time of intense political paranoia. If we pause the true crime timeline for a second and look at the French Third Republic in the 1890s, things were incredibly tense. Following Napoleon III's defeat back in 1870, the nation was fiercely split. On one side, you've got the monarchists, though they were deeply divided amongst themselves into Bourbons, Orleans, and Bonapartists. On the other side, the Republicans, who had only really secured firm control a decade or so earlier, between 1877 and 1879. The regime itself felt super fragile. And the division went even deeper than that, because even the Republicans in power were fighting each other. You had moderate Republicans who essentially just wanted internal stability, keep the peace, avoid new conflicts. But then you had the radical Republicans on the extreme left. They were pushing for deep anti-clerical reforms and, crucially, a war of revenge against Germany.
What happens next is this highly toxic political cocktail. We start seeing the birth of modern nationalism combined with a fierce wave of anti-Semitism. A really strange alliance formed, uniting extreme left radicals and conservative monarchists against that moderate elite in power. They started pushing this narrative that the moderates were the party of the foreigner, baselessly associating them with Freemasons and Jews. In this climate of intense suspicion, Alsatian Jews like Dreyfus, who had Germanic names and cultural ties, well, they became incredibly easy targets. It wasn't about the facts, it was about political convenience and systemic bias.
Which brings us to part 3, the farce and the cover-up.
The lengths the military went to here to protect its image are just mind-blowing. After Dreyfus is sent away in 1894, his brother Matthew practically dedicates his life and fortune to proving his innocence. Fast forward to 1896, the new head of intelligence, Lieutenant Colonel George Pickard, actually discovers the real traitor, Major Walsin Esterhazy, a guy drowning in gambling debts. Does the military admit their mistake? Absolutely not. The general staff ships Pickard off to Tunisia just to silence him. To keep the whole cover-up going, a major named Henry literally produces forged documents to frame Dreyfus all over again. It wasn't until 1898 that Henry's forgery was finally exposed. He confesses and commits suicide in prison, while Esterhazy flees to England and openly admits to selling the secrets. Wild, right? Honestly, this massive cover-up might have worked if not for one explosive moment. January 13th, 1898, the famous writer Émile Zola publishes J'accuse in the newspaper L'Aurore. And he doesn't just broadly call out the injustice, he explicitly names the army officials responsible. This is the turning point. It blows the conspiracy wide open and essentially forces the entire nation to take a side. And that public reckoning leads us to part 4, Dreyfusards versus anti-Dreyfusards. A nation divided. France just completely fractured into two opposing camps. On one side, the anti-Dreyfusards. They were rooted in the political right and nationalism, and their core belief was that the unquestionable honor of the army was far more important than the truth about one single individual. This sentiment actually led to the creation of the far-right group Action Française. On the flip side, you have the Dreyfusards. Backed by the left and prominent intellectuals like Zola and Marcel Proust, they fought for justice and human rights. Their momentum eventually created the bloc of the lefts and directly culminated in the massive 1905 law separating church and state in France. The fate of one man literally caused a cultural civil war. But the ripples didn't stop at the French borders. Let's look at part 5, the global historical impact. This is where the story literally redraws the map of the world. Enter Theodor Herzl. He was an Austro-Hungarian journalist covering the degradation of Dreyfus, and he was deeply shaken by what he saw. He watched a highly assimilated Jewish man be persecuted in France, the country known globally as the beacon of democracy and human rights. Herzl came to this profound, sobering realization. If a Jew wasn't safe in France, Jewish assimilation anywhere in Europe was practically impossible. Driven by that conclusion, Herzl took immediate action. In 1897, he organized the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland. That single event launched the political foundation for the modern Zionist movement. It laid the literal groundwork for the future creation of the State of Israel. So a military scandal in Paris directly catalyzed one of the most significant geopolitical shifts in modern history.
So, whatever happened to Alfred Dreyfus? That brings us to our final chapter, the rehabilitation of Dreyfus.
The road to clearing his name was agonizingly slow, and honestly, absurd. Even after the cover-up was completely exposed, they held a second military trial in 1899 and found him guilty again. The president of the Republic quickly granted him a pardon to stop the madness, but a pardon implies guilt. Dreyfus wouldn't stop until his name was fully cleared. Finally, in 1906, the Supreme Civil Court invalidated all the charges, declaring him totally and completely innocent. Amazingly, he was reinstated into the French army and even went on to serve as a decorated artillery officer during World War I.
Despite absolutely everything, the false accusations, the horrible public degradation, the years of torment on Devil's Island, his loyalty to his country survived unimaginable betrayal. He passed away in 1935, remembered not as the traitor the military tried to invent, but for what he always was, an unwavering, convinced French patriot.
Which leaves us with this final thought. How can a single hidden truth, buried in a secret trial, end up reshaping the political landscape of the entire world? From a piece of trash in an embassy wastebasket, to the separation of church and state in France, to the very foundation of the State of Israel, it is a powerful reminder that burying the truth never works forever, and the consequences of systemic injustice are truly borderless. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this incredible story keeps you questioning the history around you.